Hi guys, it's Arcus here again on What Have I Been Watching, and today we're taking a deep dive into Avengers Endgame. So, a major spoiler alert of course, if you haven't seen the film, there are gonna be spoilers in this review, so turn away now. Alright, so to start it off, Avengers Endgame is the culmination of the entire Marvel movies that have been coming out now for over 10 years and over 22 movies. So it's been a lot of build up to this film, and since Avengers Infinity War ended the way it did last year, it created even more hype for this movie, and it definitely lived up to it. I mean, this movie, it was such an amazing movie to see, and it was quite nice because it was a bit different in tone than the other movies that they've done previously. So, to start it all off, the movie is about 3 hours long, but it definitely didn't feel like that. The hours just passed by when you watched it, and yeah, sure, it was a bit slow at first, because there was a lot of dialogue, probably the first hour, nothing major happened. They were sort of building up everything, and I get why they did that, because, you know, the way Infinity War ended, with Thanos just snapping his fingers and deleting half of the population in the world, there are bound to be consequences. So this was a really refreshing sight to watch, and I was actually so surprised when I went to the movie theater and saw it, and it was in the first 20 minutes, I believe, or in the first 10 minutes, that we got introduced to Captain Marvel immediately. She came and helped them, she rescued Tony from space, just like that, and then they went off to kill Thanos. And that was the major surprise for me, that Thor just killed him off in the beginning of the movie. And it was actually quite funny, that line we had when he went. I don't remember who it was, but someone said to Thor, "Why did you do that?" And he said, "I went for the head," which was a nice throwback to Infinity War, where Thanos says she should have gone for the head. So that was really nice. But then they time jumped 5 years into the future, and this was also something I didn't expect. And as it turned out, it was really important for the plot, because now that the characters had time to live in this world and grieve all the others. And we start off by them sitting in sort of a circle, and they're sort of having a therapeutic session. We see Steve there, he's sitting and talking, and we also see, I don't remember which one, but it's one of the Russo brothers is in the scene as well. So that was really funny that they decided to include one of themselves in their own movie. So then they keep talking like that, and then, you know, then Ant-Man appears. And this was, after seeing Ant-Man and the Wasp, you're thinking, how is he gonna get out of the quantum realm? Because he's stuck there, and all the others that were supposed to get him out, they just dusted away. So there were a lot of theories speculating whether or not how he would get out. And then we finally find out in the movie, and it's just some random rat that just crawls over the button and releases him into a garage 5 years into the future. So this was that was a funny plot that they made, and just decided that it's totally coincidental that he's gonna get released like that. So either way, then he comes along, and he discovers that, you know, all the others have been wiped out. He didn't know, because he wasn't a part of Infinity War and so on. So then he goes to the Avengers Mansion, because he want to try and figure out, you know, how to stop this. He says, well, I can time travel with the quantum realm and so on. So then they start, yeah, now they start figuring out how to do this, and they decide, well, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna need Bruce. So then, when they finally find him, and I was so happy about this, they decided to bring in Professor Hulk. If you don't know who it is, it's a character from the comics, where Bruce Banner takes his mind and puts it into the Hulk's body. So he basically has all of the Hulk's attributes, but it's still Banner inside that is controlling, talking, and everything. So it's like the best of both worlds, if you would say so. So this character was such a funny character throughout the entire movie, and I definitely enjoyed the way they did with this character arc. And I mean, they were sort of building it up, because in Thor Ragnarok they had the Hulk more of a talking part. Before that he was just a green monster, but in Thor Ragnarok he sort of developed his own personality. So this was really funny to see that taken to another step in this one, with Bruce having, you know, control over everything but still being the Hulk. So that was really fun as well. So then they decide, try and come up with a way, you know, to figure out time travel. they don't really do it, so they decide we're gonna ask Tony for help. So then we see Tony living in a cabin in in nowhere almost with Pepper, and he's had a daughter, which was also just a perfect. Out of everybody that is so miserable, Tony actually seemed to have been living a pretty peaceful life. You know, he's in mourning of Peter Parker and all of the other characters, but he still had a successful life because he'd started his own family with Pepper the way he always wanted. So that was really nice. And then, you know, the genius that he is, he couldn't just leave it behind, so he figures out how time travel works, and then he goes on, and then they decide we're gonna go back in time and get the new Infinity Stones, because Thanos erased the ones in the present timeline when he did the second snap. So then they decide we split up in teams and we're gonna find all of the other Infinity Stones. So four of them set off to the Battle of New York in 2012's The Avengers, and this was also such a really good way to get throwbacks. We got to see a lot of scenes that were in the original movie, but in a new angle. Got to see it from behind or from a different perspective, and we got to see the characters interact with each other. And one of the funniest scenes was when Steve from the future ran into Steve from the past, and they had this entire fight, and yeah, that was just a really fun moment to watch. That was definitely a fan moment, and I really enjoyed it. So that's that. But then they somehow mess up a bit, and the Hulk comes in. The 2012 Hulk comes in and destroys a bunch of things. So then they have to go back even further, and then Tony and Cap says we're gonna go back to the 70s when I believe it was a space stone, or the one in the Tesseract, either way. The Tesseract. They're going after the Tesseract. So they go back to the 70s, to the research facility of S.H.I.E.L.D., where Tony's dad is actually working, and Hank Pym as well, because they need Pym particles in order to get back to the future. So they set off there. Meanwhile, we have Clint and Natasha. They're going to Vormir to get the Soul Stone. And, you know, you figured when you heard they're gonna get there, one of them is gonna die, because that's the only way to get the Soul Stone. And the interaction with Red Skull, once again, it was really funny, and he brought up things that they didn't even know about themselves. And then we had they argued back and forth whether or not who should jump and, you know, who should sacrifice themselves for the Soul Stone. And Clint says it's gonna be him, and then he jumps off, and you think, well, that's that. But then Natasha jumps after him and saves him, and then they have this sort of, I don't know, crying moment. It's sort of a sad moment, and then Clint finally has to let go of Natasha, and she just dies. So that was a really sad point in the movie, and definitely not something I expected, because I didn't expect them to just kill her off. Well, I guess why they did it, because, you know, Clint has his entire family, and that's his entire motive for, you know, doing what he does in the movie. Which also brings to the point that before all this happens, he adapts the personality of Ronin, which is also from the comics, because he finds out his entire family has been killed by Thanos, so he goes into this deep, dark spiral, and he starts killing off a bunch of drug lords in, I believe it was Japan he was in. So he adapts the personality of Ronin, that's in the comics, and this was also a really amazing moment for comic book readers. So he takes that, and meanwhile we have the third group, you would say. They're setting off to Asgard, and there we have Fat Thor and Rocket. And the way they did Thor in this movie, they continued on the path from Thor Ragnarok with him having a more of a comical sense, you know. He has more comical lines, he's more of a comedy character now, and he was so amazing in the entire movie. So the first time they set off to find Thor in New Asgard, which was located in Norway, I believe. Somehow they have New Asgard, and they're looking for Thor, and when we finally see him, I mean, you get why he is fat now. Because he's been living with depression and guilt for 5 years now since he killed Thanos, and it didn't help anything. And that he has to live with that guilt. So he's become fat either way, which was really funny. And then we finally get the return of Valkyrie. She's sort of leading them now, because Thor is, you know, off playing Fortnite, which was also a really amazing moment. So they end. So Rocket and I don't remember who else it was, but it could have been. I think it was Bruce or Professor Hulk, or what you will call him. They want to find him, and when they get to its cabin, we have Thor there. We also have Korg and Meek, and they're sitting and playing Fortnite. Everybody, all of them, and that entire scene was so hilarious. And yeah, so back to the Infinity Stone getting. So we have Thor and Rocket. They're off to Asgard in during the same time period that Thor: The Dark World was in a plot point. So we actually get to see the return of Jane, because she's apparently she has one of the stones inside of her. So they try to get that out. Thor has a nice moment with his mother, and that was a really nice scene as well. And she reminds him that everything's gonna be okay and so on. So that was a really good moment as well, and I think it was important for his character arc moving forward in the film. And then, I mean, I could talk about this forever because there are so many plot points. Because in 2012's New York, we also have the Hulk talking to the Ancient One, which was also really nice that that character made a comeback, even though she's technically dead in the future. She made a comeback, and we got to see the Sanctum, and because she's the protector of the Time Stone, and they had this whole argument of what happens when you remove when the stones from the present timeline. It creates alternate universes and so on, which is definitely going to be something moving forward in the films. But I'm going to talk about that a bit later. So we have all that. They secure all of the stones, but at the same time, Thanos finds out what their mission is in the present, in the past, because he has Nebula, and somehow the two Nebulas connect their memories. So Thanos get a glint of what is about to happen. So he sends in his past Nebula to infiltrate the future. So when they get there, they put together all the stones. Hulk makes the snap, and then we see Clint's phone ringing, and I think it's his daughter or it's his wife or someone in his family, and you get the entire tone of the movie is lifted because there's green colors everywhere and everything's just perfect moment for about 10 seconds. And then Thanos arrives with his ship and his army through the quantum portal, and he starts blasting the Avengers Mansion. And now it's been about 2 hours in the movie, I believe, so there's still 1 hour left, and this is the best moment in the entire film, according to me, because this is when we get that giant battle. At the moment when you see them, first they're battling Thanos alone. So we have Iron Man, we have Captain America, and we have Thor. Those three characters, they're battling Thanos for quite a while alone, and they seem to be losing. But then the most epic moment, I mean, there's a lot of epic moments, but this moment, everyone in the audience cheered when this happened, and this was when Captain America picked up Thor's hammer Mjolnir, which he retrieved from Asgard when they went back in time. He picked up the hammer, because if you remember, Hela destroyed it in Thor Ragnarok, but he picked it up again in Thor: The Dark World when he went back. So now Captain America, he picks up the hammer, and Thor says, "I knew it," because it was a throwback back to Age of Ultron, where they try to lift the hammer, and Steve actually makes it move a little bit, and Thor gets a bit worried, but then he's like, nah. But now he finally says it, and apparently Captain America is finally ready to wield the hammer. He's honorable enough to do it. So that was a really awesome scene, seeing Cap fighting with both the hammer and his shield against Thanos, but ultimately his shield gets destroyed, and things are looking a bit sad for them. And then we hear Sam over the headphones or something to Steve saying, "Are you okay?" and so on. And then we get this epic moment with all the portals opening up, and we see all of the old characters that died or vanished in Infinity War come back throughout the portals. It was such an amazing moment. We have all of the major characters. We had Iron Spider, Peter Parker. We have Doctor Strange back. All of the Guardians are back. All of the Black Panther characters are back. And yeah, there are so many characters, and even all of the characters that didn't disappear appear as well. So we have Valkyrie there again with her Pegasus, and just every possible character you can think of. And even have Pepper Pot suiting up in the rescue armor, which she does in the comics as well. So she takes on one of Iron Man's suits and makes it. I don't know if he made it for her, but either way, she jumps into the rescue suit, and we have this entire giant battle between all of the characters versus Thanos and his entire army, and he has also brought back his children of the dark, if there's some, Ebony Maw and all of those that was in Infinity War in the beginning. So all of them are back now again, and yeah, they're fighting it out, and this scene was just amazing. I didn't want it to end because it was so amazing. And we even have Captain Marvel return a bit to the fight, and she blasts through the ships, and it looks like she's too powerful to be there, but then, as things turn out, they're battling with front and back, and a lot of stuff happens. It's a really cool scene. And then we finally get the ultimate moment when Thanos is just about to snap his fingers because he has assembled the gauntlet again with the stones, or so he thinks, but as it turns out, Iron Man has actually stolen the stones and makes his own gauntlet and snaps his fingers, and Thanos and his entire army just vanish. But what was so sad about this was that is the end of Iron Man's arc in the movies, and he actually dies of this. But the way they did it was so amazing, because right before Thanos snapped his fingers, he says, "I am inevitable," and Tony responds with, "I am Iron Man." And then he snaps his fingers, and that's the last thing he says in the movie, which was a really perfect way, because afterwards, when they're sort of having, the goodbye for Iron Man, he's sitting there, he can still breathe and everything, but he doesn't say anything, which was a really beautiful way for him not to say any more words after that line. So now that's happened, they've won, Thanos is gone and everything, and now we get to the even more sad part when they're at Tony's funeral. We get all of the characters there, and they're standing in sort of groups, for their respective movies, which was really cool as well. And they even brought back the kid from Iron Man 3, which is a lot older now. He was also there at the funeral, so that was a really amazing scene as well. And then they start building up towards the future. So now they have to go back with the stones to the past where they took them. So Steve decides, well, I'm gonna go back and fix it, but he should be back in about 5 seconds, but he isn't. And then we see an old man sitting on a bench a bit away back, and we get to see that this is Steve, and he's actually gone back. He left the stones where they should be, and then he went back to the 40s and lived his life with Peggy the way it was supposed to be all along. And this was also a really good ending to his character arc as well. And I'm really glad they decided not to kill him off, because it would have been too emotional to kill both Tony and Cap in the same movie. So I was really happy that they made him have the happy ending that he wanted. So that's that, and then he hands off the shield to Sam, which is apparently now going to be the new Captain America moving forward. So we're gonna have to see how that becomes. I mean, I'm excited for it to see how they're gonna write it. And I mean, the discussion was always between Sam and Bucky, because both of them have had the shield and the persona of Captain America in the comics. So they're gonna go with Sam in the movies, and I'm excited to see what they can do with this movie forward. And I know that Disney Plus is starting a bunch of series that are connected, TV series that are connected to these characters. So I know that Bucky and Sam are gonna get their own series. There's also gonna be a series of Wanda and Vision. They're gonna have one with Clint as well, with Hawkeye, and there was one more. I keep forgetting what it's about. Yeah, there's one more, because there were four series, I believe. Alright, so we have that entire moment, and we also have the sad moment after, I believe it was, I don't remember if it was after funeral or before the funeral. It's been almost a month since I saw the movie now, so we have this moment where Tony has recorded himself in his screen, and we get a hologram of him talking to both Pepper and his daughter, which was a really sad moment, but I'm really happy that they decided to stick along with this. So that's that, and then we also get to see Thor leaving off the entire responsibility of Asgard to Valkyrie, making her sort of the leader now of them, and he decides, I'm finished with this, I'm gonna go be with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and he calls them the Asgardians of the Galaxy, which is actually also from the comics. So this was also a really fun way, and I'm really excited to see what he can do there, and I'm definitely hoping that they will include him in Guardians 3, because that's the way they ended this film, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, the director James Gunn is gonna have a Thor in Guardians 3, but I would really happy if they did, because that would be such a funny, clash between both Thor and Peter Quill. Because they had a clash in Infinity War and it worked out really well, and Thor, he cooperated with Rocket and Groot there to get his hammer, Stormbreaker. So I'm really happy for that moment as well. So that's sort of the film explained in a very long way. I know you've probably seen it, but these are my own opinions, and there was so many points I loved in the movie, and I'm so excited. I want to see it again very soon. I'm going to, because there's so many details that I probably missed, and so many nods to the past films that I'm gonna have to retrace and see again. But it's so exciting, and I'm really excited for the future now of the Marvel Universe. Because now Thanos is gone, so that leaves it wide open who's gonna become the next major villain in the films. And we also get a little bit of glimpse now, because Spider-Man Far From Home is coming as well soon, and I've seen a bunch of trailers for them, and the way it looks, it's looking really good, and it's gonna be the end of Phase 3 in Marvel. So Spider-Man Far From Home is gonna be the last one in Phase 3, and then Phase 4, I believe, is either gonna kick off with the Eternals movie or some other movie. It was supposed to be Guardians 3, but the way the whole thing, they had this debacle with James Gunn and so on. He was fired, but then he was rehired now, so that's not gonna be the movie that's coming out first in Phase 4 anymore. I don't believe either way. So I think it's gonna be probably the Eternals. So we're gonna see, and I think they stated that the Phase 4 is gonna be more of a cosmic universe, which I guess makes sense, because Captain Marvel is gonna be more featured in that. Because I read somewhere that she signed a contract for 7 movies in the MCU, and that's a lot, and she's only been in 2 films so far, if you count her own solo movie Captain Marvel, and she had small appearances in Endgame. It wasn't a lot, and the way they built it up in Captain Marvel, I thought that she was going to be a major character in the film, but she was actually only in the beginning and a bit in the end. She was not in the movie quite a lot. But I get why, because Endgame was about the original cast of the Avengers, and I was really happy that they decided to focus a lot on those people. So I mean, I could sit and talk here a bit days about this movie and what's to come in the future. I mean, there's been so many rumors that, now that Disney has acquired the rights to Fox, they're gonna get the rights to the New Mutants, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and that leaves it open to all of the villains as well. Like Galactus, which is, I heard a lot of people are speculating could be the next major big villain in the MCU. And there's also been talk of Kang the Conqueror a bit, which is also from the comics. And Kang is quite special because he's sort of a time traveler from the future, and he assembles his own city sort of in a outer space time called Chronopolis. And the only reason why people think that he could be the next villain is because in Ant-Man and the Wasp, when they're inside the quantum realm, we get a picture or a small scene where there's a city in the background in the quantum realm. And some people speculated and thought that this could be Chronopolis that Kang is responsible for, but at the same time it seems a bit obscure that they would decide to go with time travel again in the upcoming film, since they sort of did this now in Endgame, and I don't think they want to reuse it. I think they want to just leave it behind and move on with something else, but it's a possibility that it could happen. And also, I'm gonna go a bit into spoiler territory. If you haven't seen the trailers for Spider-Man Far From Home, I'm gonna spoil a bit of that now as well, so if you don't want to hear it, you can just turn away now for a bit. So, in the trailer for Spider-Man Far From Home, they introduced the multiverse theory, which also just blew my mind, and I guess it's sort of the perfect way for them to moving forward, because now they had, the snap with the gauntlet, it tore a hole in the entire universe, and we now have this multiverse theory, where they can have the same characters from different Earths come in, which is also really funny, because now we finally could have interactions between different characters in the comics. We could have, like, the movie that came out not long ago, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. We could have sort of those characters embroidered into the MCU, so we could finally have, like, Spider-Man Noir. There's so many, and we could even have not Peter Parker's version, we could have Miles Morales' version of Spider-Man. So there's a lot of characters going forward that Marvel could use now with this multiverse theory, and it would also make perfect sense for them to introduce the X-Men if they wanted to, or the Fantastic Four. It would leave an explanation to why they haven't been used in the MCU before, and why they weren't introduced until now. And because now, when they have multiple Earths, they can have them coming from a different one and decide to join in the MCU. So I'm really excited for this movie as well, and it's coming out in July. So I'm hopeful for the future of the MCU. So I don't know if it's even possible to put a rating on this movie. I mean, it definitely exceeded my expectations by miles. There were so many moments in this film that I laughed out or I cried at the end. It was such a beautiful film, and all credit goes to the Russo brothers, the cast, the crew, everyone that has been working on this film, because there's so many amazing visuals, the acting is really solid, and just the entire vision that the Russo brothers had of this movie, which made it such a perfect ending to all of these films that have been building up for so long. So I'm guessing, I don't mean, it's obviously a 10 out of 10, but I would even rate it higher than that, because I rated Infinity War that as well, which I definitely think it deserves, but this film was better than Infinity War in my own opinion, so if I could I would put it higher than a 10 out of 10, but that's what I feel right now. As always, I'm really curious what you thought about the film. Leave your thoughts and comments down below. If you have any questions, do that as well, and if you have anything you want me to review next, just comment down below and I'll get back to you. As always, this has been Arcus, signing off.